It was a typical night after basketball practice. The kind of night where your muscles burn from exhaustion, but your mind feels crystal clear, like a fog lifting. I had just finished one of those grueling sessions where the coach pushed us to our limits. Drills that made my arms feel like lead and my legs screamed for relief. But when I stepped off the court, the soreness wasn't enough to erase the satisfaction of a good practice. As I grabbed my water bottle from my bag and wiped the sweat from my brow, I could still hear the echo of the basketball bouncing on the hardwood floor. It felt like I was the only one left in the gym. The others had long since gone, their loud chatter and laughter replaced by the hum of the fluorescent lights above me. I wasn't in a rush to leave. In fact, I was taking my time, hoping the locker room would empty out even more. That way, I could get in and out of the showers without feeling like I was under a spotlight. I wasn't exactly the most comfortable guy when it came to changing in front of others, but it wasn't just that. It was the fact that Ryan, my best friend, had stayed behind too, and I wasn't sure how I felt about it. Ryan, he was everything I wasn't. Effortlessly cool, tall and broad-shouldered, with this natural confidence that made people gravitate toward him. He had this way of lighting up any room he walked into, making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the world. But for some reason, when it came to me, there was something different in his smile. Something that made my stomach flip every time we hung out. He was my best friend, no doubt about that. But lately, my feelings for him had started to shift, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. I knew it was crazy. He was straight, and we had been friends for years. Guys who joked around, played basketball together, and did all the typical things. But recently, every time I looked at him, I felt something more. Something I had no idea how to name. I couldn't deny that the way he laughed, the way his hazel eyes locked with mine for just a fraction of a second longer than usual, made my heart race in a way it shouldn't. I couldn't help myself. I had started to fantasize about what it would be like to hold him, kiss him, to be more than just friends. But then the fear would hit. What if I ruined everything? What if he wasn't feeling the same thing? What if I made things awkward between us? The thought of losing him was too much to bear. So, I buried those feelings deep down, pretending they weren't there. I focused on the game, on school, on hanging out with other friends. But there was always this nagging feeling that wouldn't go away. And now, as I walked into the locker room, I was once again caught in that internal tug-of-war. The sound of a locker door slamming shut broke my thoughts. I glanced over, and there he was, Ryan, leaning against one of the lockers with his arms crossed, his usual grin replaced by something that looked different. There was a kind of intensity in his eyes that I wasn't used to seeing. Ryan was always the easygoing one, the guy who kept things light and fun. But tonight, he looked like he was on the verge of saying something important, something that could change everything. "Hey man, you still here?" I called out, my voice a little shaky despite my attempt to sound casual. Ryan turned his head and flashed me that trademark grin of his, but it didn't reach his eyes. He pushed off from the locker and took a couple of steps toward me. My heart skipped a beat, and my mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. Was he going to bring it up? The tension that had been building between us. I had no idea what was going on, but my instincts told me something was different tonight. "Yeah," Ryan said, his voice soft, almost like he was carefully choosing his words. "I wanted to catch you before you left. There's something I need to talk to you about." I froze, my stomach dropping. The words hit me like a freight train. My pulse quickened, and my mouth went dry. What was he going to say? What did he need to talk about? My mind instantly jumped to a dozen possibilities, but none of them made sense. He wasn't going to confess something to me, was he? Ryan took another step closer, his hazel eyes locking onto mine. And for the first time in a long time, I couldn't read him. The playful, teasing Ryan was gone, replaced by someone more serious, more intense. I wanted to back away, to run, to escape the mounting pressure in the room. But my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. I couldn't move, not with him standing so close, not with his gaze so intense. I wasn't sure if I was ready for whatever he was about to say. Hell, I wasn't even sure if I was ready to hear it.
The gym had emptied out faster than I expected, but I stuck around. I knew Sean would still be here. He always stayed behind, lingering in the quiet after practice, like he needed the extra time to unwind. Me? I was usually the first to get out of here, but tonight, something felt different. It was like there was this tension between us that had been building for weeks, and I wasn't sure what it was or how to fix it. I didn't know what was going on, but I felt like I needed to talk to Sean. Really talk to him, more than we ever had before. Sean was my best friend. He always had been. We played basketball together since middle school, spent hours laughing, joking around, and even dealing with life shit. He was the kind of guy I knew I could always count on. But lately, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Maybe it was the way he would catch my eye a little too long when we'd joke around, or the way he laughed just a little too nervously at my stupid comments. I don't know. Something just didn't feel the same anymore. And for the first time, I realized that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't just friendship I felt for him. I had tried to ignore it, brush it off. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Sean was straight and I was straight. Nothing could ever come of it. But every time I saw him, every time he smiled at me, something inside me couldn't deny it. The attraction was there. I knew it was. And the thought of letting things stay the way they were, pretending I didn't feel what I felt, it made me sick. When I saw him walk into the locker room, I knew it was time to do something about it. It was now or never. I waited, my heart pounding in my chest, trying to work up the courage to say something. Anything. I needed to hear how he felt. I needed to know if I was the only one who was going crazy inside. "Hey, man, you still here?" Sean called out, breaking me from my thoughts. His voice had a little tremble to it, which made my stomach tighten. I could tell he was nervous too. "Yeah," I said, try and keep it steady. "I wanted to catch you before you left. There's something I need to talk to you about." I took a step toward him, and for the first time in a long time, I saw him freeze. It wasn't like him to look so uncertain. My heart thudded in my chest, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but I knew I had to say something.
The air in the locker room felt heavier now. It wasn't just the humidity from the showers or the remnants of sweat in the air. It was the electricity between us, thick enough to cut with a knife. I stood there frozen, my heart racing in my chest. Ryan wasn't the kind of guy to get serious. I mean, sure, we'd had deep talks about life before, but this was different. This wasn't some casual, "What's up, man?" kind of conversation. He had that look in his eyes, the same kind of look you get when you're about to do or say something life-changing. Sure, man," I finally said, my voice cracking a little. Damn, why was I so nervous? It wasn't like this was our first conversation. I was making it out to be something huge, but really it was just a conversation, right? He took another step closer, and my pulse jumped. The space between us felt smaller now. Ryan's usual smile wasn't there, the playful, teasing grin that always put me at ease. Instead, his lips were pressed together in a tight line, and his brows furrowed like he was trying to sort through something in his head. I could see the wheels turning behind his hazel eyes. "Look, Sean," Ryan started, his voice quieter now. "I've been thinking about this for a while, and I can't keep it to myself anymore." My breath caught in my throat. Was this it? Was he finally going to bring up the weirdness between us? The last few weeks had felt like something was different between us, like there was an unspoken tension every time we were together. But I didn't know how to put a name to it, until now. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. I wasn't sure what to say. What could I say? My head was swimming, racing through all the possible scenarios. Was this about me? Was it about us? Ryan took a deep breath, and I could see his chest rise and fall slowly. It was like he was trying to find the courage to say something that was really hard for him. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just some casual conversation. Whatever he was about to say was going to change everything. I don't know how to say this, but Ryan trailed off, and I could see the uncertainty in his eyes now. It made my stomach drop. I think I've been feeling something for you. Something more than just friendship. And I've been avoiding it because, well, you're my best friend. And I didn't want to screw that up. But I can't ignore it anymore. The room seemed to spin around me. My heart started pounding in my chest like a drum. Did he just say what I thought he said? I mean, this couldn't be real, could it? I felt dizzy, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions that crashed over me. The rush of relief, the fear, the confusion, all tangled up inside me. My mouth went dry, and I couldn't find the right words. This was everything I had been secretly wishing for, but it was so sudden, so unexpected that I wasn't sure what to do with it. Ryan, I stammered, trying to find something to say. I don't know what to say. I looked at him, his face inches away from mine now, and I could see the rawness in his expression. He was waiting for me to say something, anything. I knew this was the moment. I knew I had to say something back, but my thoughts were jumbled, and I couldn't get the words out. Ryan's face fell, just slightly. I understand if you don't feel the same way, Sean. I just had to tell you, I couldn't keep this inside anymore. I felt like I was suffocating. But I didn't want to lose him. I didn't want to tell him that I felt the same way, but was too scared to admit it. Too scared to risk everything we had. But in that moment, something shifted in me. I couldn't keep pretending that I didn't feel it too. The truth was, I did. I had for a while now. I started, but my voice faltered. Then I took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. I feel the same way. Ryan blinked, his face going from uncertain to shocked, then to something softer. Something like relief, maybe. You do? I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. Yeah, I do. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. It felt like time had stopped, and everything around us faded away. There was just us, standing there in the locker room. The world outside no longer mattered. Ryan reached out slowly, like he wasn't sure how I would react. But then he gently placed his hand on my shoulder. The touch felt electric. I can't believe this, he said softly, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. I honestly thought I was going crazy for a while. You're not crazy, I whispered, my voice barely audible. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this was real. Maybe everything between us could change for the better. Maybe we didn't have to hide our feelings anymore.
My heart was pounding in my chest as I looked at Sean. I had been waiting for this moment for what felt like forever, and now that it was finally here, I wasn't sure what the hell I was doing. But I had to say something. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine between us, when all I could think about was him. When I saw him walk into the locker room, I knew I couldn't let this moment slip by. I had to tell him how I felt, even if it meant risking our friendship. I had never been good at confronting feelings, especially not ones that scared the hell out of me. But I couldn't ignore it any longer. Look, Sean, I started, trying to steady my breath. I've been thinking about this for a while, and I can't keep it to myself anymore. His eyes widened a little, and for a second, I thought I saw a flicker of something in his expression. Fear? Surprise? Maybe both. It was hard to tell, but I could feel the tension in the air. I don't know how to say this, but I trailed off, trying to find the right words. I think I've been feeling something for you. Something more than just friendship. And I've been avoiding it because, well, you're my best friend, and I didn't want to screw that up. But I can't ignore it anymore. The words hung in the air between us, and I watched Sean's expression shift. I could see the confusion, the shock, and something else, maybe relief? But he didn't say anything. His silence made my heart race even faster. Did he feel the same? Was I just making a fool of myself? Ryan, He stammered. I don't know what to say. It was killing me to see him struggle like that. But I couldn't take it back. I needed to say it. I needed him to know. I understand if you don't feel the same way, Sean. I just had to tell you. I couldn't keep this inside anymore. I watched his face fall just a little, but then his expression softened. It was like something inside him had clicked. He took a deep breath, and then finally he spoke. I feel the same way. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. You do. His voice was so quiet, but I heard it loud and clear, and in that moment, it was like everything fell into place. My nerves eased, and I realized I wasn't the only one who had been scared of this. We were both in this, together. Maybe this was the start of something new. Maybe we could make this work. We both stood there, still, just looking at each other, the weight of the words settling between us. I reached out and placed my hand on his shoulder, not knowing exactly what I was doing, but wanted to make sure that we both knew it was real. His eyes met mine, and I saw something there that I hadn't expected, a shared vulnerability. I can't believe this, I said softly, almost in disbelief. I honestly thought I was going crazy for a while. You're not crazy, he whispered back, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed it.
It was like the world around us was quieter now. As soon as I admitted that I felt the same way, something between us shifted. The space between us seemed to close in an instant, and I could feel the weight of everything we hadn't said, everything we hadn't acknowledged. Ryan's hand was still on my shoulder, but now it felt different. It wasn't just the usual friendly gesture. This time, it sent a spark through me that left me feeling both exposed and oddly safe. It was like he was grounding me, or maybe he was just as unsure as I was about what came next. Either way, neither of us moved away, and that felt like something important. His hazel eyes were searching mine, like he was waiting for some kind of confirmation that we were both on the same page. He had been brave enough to say it out loud, and now it was my turn to show him that I wasn't backing out. You really feel the same? Ryan's voice was softer now, the edge of uncertainty still lingering, but with something else too. Hope. I could see that hope in his eyes, and I didn't want to break it. I nodded, taking a slow breath, trying to find the right words. But the truth was, I wasn't sure how to process what had just happened. It felt like everything had changed, but it hadn't. We were still the same people, just with a deeper layer that we'd never explored. Yeah, I said, my voice low. I do. I've been feeling this way for a while, too. I saw Ryan's expression soften, that boyish grin of his returning, but there was something more tender about it now, like the teasing had faded, replaced by something quieter, something more real. Ryan didn't say anything else. Instead, he leaned in just slightly, not enough to make it awkward, but enough to signal that maybe he was testing the waters. I froze for a moment, my heart jumping in my throat. Was he really going to kiss me? Was that what was happening now? For a split second, I hesitated. My brain told me to pull back, that things were moving too fast. But then I realized I didn't want to. I wanted to feel what it was like to be close to him in a way I hadn't let myself before. To cross that line, even if I didn't know exactly what it meant for us. I met him halfway, closing the distance between us. Our lips brushed, and it was nothing like I'd imagined. It wasn't some passionate, movie-worthy kiss. It was gentle, tentative, like we were both still trying to figure out the rules of this new game we were playing. But it was real, and it felt right. When we pulled back, Ryan's smile was a little shy, a little uncertain, but it was genuine. Wow, he whispered. I didn't know it could feel like this. Me neither, I said, laughing nervously. But then, something in me shifted. I wasn't scared anymore. Not about him, or about what we were becoming. I still didn't know what came next, but for the first time, I felt like I was being honest with myself. I wasn't hiding anything, not from him. Not anymore.
I could feel the tension between us, but it was different now. Before, It had been the kind of tension that made me nervous, like we were walking on eggshells around each other. But now it felt like an open door, a chance to step into something new, something exciting, and I wasn't sure where it would take us. But I didn't care. I had always been a guy who kept things light, who cracked jokes and stayed on the surface. But with Sean, everything felt different. He was my best friend, the person I could be myself around, and now I was seeing him in a way I hadn't before. I couldn't explain it, but when he finally said that he felt the same way, I realized just how much I had wanted him to say it. It was terrifying, but also the most freeing thing I'd ever felt. It was like a weight lifted off my shoulders, and I suddenly realized how much I had been holding back. His voice was quiet, and I could tell he was still trying to process everything, but when he nodded and said, "Yeah, I do," I couldn't stop the relief that washed over me. It felt like a green light, like we were both ready to go down this path together. When I touched his shoulder, I wasn't sure if I should pull back or let things progress. But I didn't want to overthink it. I wanted to see if he wanted the same thing I did. And then it happened. He closed the distance between us, just like I was hoping he would. It wasn't the kind of kiss I had imagined 1,000 times in my head, but it was better. It was real. I felt his lips against mine, soft and hesitant at first, like he was testing the waters, and I was doing the same. But I didn't want to let go. Not of the kiss, not of the moment. I wanted more. When we pulled back, my chest was tight, but in the best way. I could feel his heartbeat racing against mine, and I could tell by the look in his eyes that he was just as shaken up as I was. "Wow," I said, trying to lighten the moment, but it was clear we were both a little stunned. I didn't know it'd feel like this. He laughed, and I felt the nervousness that had been gripping me start to dissolve. Me neither. And I realized something in that moment. I wasn't scared anymore. I didn't need to be. For the first time in forever, I felt like I had the chance to just be with him. No masks, no pretending. Whatever came next, we would figure out together.
The next few days were weird. We both acted like nothing had changed, like the kiss hadn't happened. But I could feel it in the air between us. Every time I looked at Ryan, I saw that spark again, something deeper than before. But neither of us said anything about it. At first, I was fine with it. We were just going to let things breathe, right? Let it settle in and figure out what came next, at our own pace. But the silence started to feel heavy. I didn't know if he was waiting for me to say something, or if he was just as lost as I was. The uncertainty was killing me, and I hated it. What if he regretted it? What if I had just ruined our friendship by crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed? I couldn't stop myself from overthinking everything, wondering if this was some sort of phase for him that he'd grow out of, or if he was genuinely interested in exploring this with me. I knew he wasn't the type of guy to make hasty decisions, but what if I was reading into things? Maybe I was just hoping it meant something more than it really did. I finally decided to take the plunge and reach out to him, because I couldn't keep playing this game of pretending like everything was normal when it felt like my entire world had shifted. I texted him that night. "Hey, can we talk tomorrow? About, stuff." I knew I'd regret it the moment I sent it, but it was out there now. I had to talk to him about this. No more waiting. No more pretending.
It wasn't that I didn't want to talk about what happened. It's just, I wasn't sure how to bring it up. Things between me and Sean had been perfect. At least, they had felt perfect. We had this easy camaraderie, this friendship that felt unshakable. But after that kiss, I started questioning everything. Was I really ready for this? Was Sean really ready for this? I kept telling myself I didn't need to rush into anything. But every time I saw him, I couldn't ignore the way my heart seemed to beat a little faster. I wanted to talk to him about it, but I didn't want to mess up what we had. What if he was having second thoughts? What if this was just some one-time thing for him? I had never been great at expressing my feelings, especially not when it came to something so complicated. But I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't just pretend like nothing had changed. We both knew it had. When his text came through, my stomach dropped. He wanted to talk about it. It wasn't like he hadn't been giving me signs, he had. But seeing it in writing felt like a confirmation that we couldn't go back to how things were. I didn't know if I was ready for that. I mean, we were best friends, right? Could we be more? Was that even possible? I sat on the message for a while before I finally responded. Yeah, tomorrow works. We need to talk. It was a simple reply, but in my head, I was already running through 1,000 different scenarios. What would we say? What would we do? Would everything be ruined? I had so many questions. But I knew one thing. We had to figure this out. We couldn't keep dancing around it.
The room was dimly lit, the faint glow of the streetlights casting a soft shadow through the blinds. The tension between us had faded, replaced by something deeper, something quieter. I felt the weight of every unspoken word we'd shared in the last few days. Ryan sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed with every movement. We were no longer awkward. There was no longer any hesitation. We both knew what we needed. Neither of us had to say it. We could feel it. I turned to him, meeting his gaze for the first time since we'd opened up about everything. His eyes held something that made my chest tighten, a warmth, a reassurance, and something deeper that spoke of trust and understanding. I reached out, my fingers gently touching his, the simple contact grounding me. "You're sure?" I asked quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. Ryan gave me a small smile, his lips curving softly as he nodded. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. His words made my heart race in a way I didn't expect. I had been so scared, so unsure, but hearing him say that, it erased all the doubts. Without thinking, I leaned in, closing the small gap between us. His breath caught as our lips met, soft and tentative at first, as if we were both testing the waters, making sure this was really happening. But then something clicked. The kiss deepened, a quiet urgency filling the space between us. It wasn't rushed or frantic. It was slow, deliberate, and filled with every ounce of emotion we'd been holding back. His hand found my face, fingers gently cupping my jaw as if he was memorizing the feel of my skin. I let myself sink into it, into the feeling of him against me, the warmth of his touch, the tenderness in the way he held me. Everything else faded away. The world outside, the noise, the fear. There was just Ryan and me, here, in this moment. I pulled away just enough to breathe, our foreheads resting against each other. And in that silence, I felt a sense of calm. This was it. This was real. I never thought we'd get here, I whispered, my voice hoarse with emotion. Ryan chuckled softly, the sound like music to my ears. Neither did I, but now that we are, I'm glad it's with you. I closed my eyes, savoring the moment, the peace that had settled over me. This was right. We were right. There was no second guessing it anymore.
Everything about this moment felt like it was meant to happen. The world had quieted down, the weight of all the uncertainty lifted, and all that was left was Sean and me, standing on the precipice of something beautiful and unknown. I felt my heart beat in my chest, fast and steady, as his fingers brushed against mine. The touch was simple, yet it carried more weight than I had ever felt. I could feel every ounce of hesitation he had melted away, just like mine. The past few days have been an emotional roller coaster, but now, in the stillness of the room, everything felt so clear. When he turned to look at me, his gaze was full of something I couldn't quite put into words. There was vulnerability in his eyes, but also strength, a strength I admired so much. I wanted him to know that I was there, not just as his best friend, but as someone who cared about him in a way I had never imagined. I smiled at him, feeling my chest tighten with the overwhelming need to show him how much he meant to me. When he asked if I was sure, the words felt easy to say. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I wasn't lying. For all the doubts I'd had, for all the fears about ruining what we had, it had all fallen away. Being with him felt like the most natural thing in the world. As his lips touched mine, I felt everything shift. It was soft at first, tentative, like we were both checking for permission. But then it deepened and I lost myself in the kiss. There was no urgency, no panic, just a quiet understanding. His lips were warm against mine, his touch gentle yet sure. I ran my hand over his face, memorizing the way his skin felt, the way his breath came in short bursts as we kissed. The world didn't matter. Nothing mattered except this. When we pulled away, our foreheads pressed together, our breaths mingling in the space between us. There was no need for words. We had already said everything we needed to say. "I never thought we'd get here," Sean murmured, and I could hear the emotion in his voice. I smiled, letting out a soft laugh. "Neither did I. But now that we are, I'm glad it's with you." And in that moment, I knew this was right. This wasn't just about a kiss or a moment of passion. It was about connection, about trust, about finding someone who made everything else fall into place. And with Sean, it had all fallen into place. I pulled him closer, savoring the feel of him against me. This was just the beginning.
And that's where our story ends. But for Sean and Ryan, it's just the beginning. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more heartfelt narratives like this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Petals Pride. Your support means a lot, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Did this story resonate with you? What kind of stories would you like to see next? Make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. See you in the next one.